Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you again for an evening edition of Better Off Dead before the evening slate kicks off. I apologize for this morning, as obviously I was not able to get everything done this morning with this huge slate. Usually I can. I was trying to fly through it, but man, I can't stop talking. I gave you all the college basketball. Let's get into it a little bit. College basketball, just recap. I have 5 plays here, and enjoy Marquette and St. John's, by the way, starting at 6:30 p.m., and so is Kent State and Eastern Michigan, although that's not a game I talked about, but I do like St. John's in this first game. You can get a decent price on that, still 2.5 or money line. Looks like they do have more of the cash on them. I still agree with that side. I mean, everything that I said this morning, I still agree with. My college basketball plays, once again, Central Michigan -1. You can go watch my morning video to get the analysis on these, so I'm not going to go back into it, but I will just look at how I did as far as beating the closing numbers. Central Michigan's up to 1.5 with juice. They have the cash percentage, so that one looks like, yeah, I do have market agreement with me on that one. Next one up was Northwestern -2. Where's that at? Just trying to go through and just see how I did here. They look like they have the cash percentage on them too. It's up to 2.5 with juice. Now, hopefully you got these this morning because these lines have moved a little bit, but not really a significant move. So, I mean, you could potentially play the slightly worse number or play a money line or something like that, or parlay some of these things and hope that it gets done. Although, obviously, I like straight betting over parlays. I do have Wisconsin -9.5 or -9, whatever it was. What was it? I forget. Either one of those numbers. I mean, there's not much of a difference there. And where's that one? They're actually down to 8.5, although they have 95% of the cash and 62% of the tickets. So they do have the cash percentage on them too, but the line has moved down a little bit. So that one maybe did not quite move in my favor, but I think I got 9 on that one, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. Arizona, and looks like the cash is on. And then Arizona State, I crushed. I got the 1.5 on Arizona State. They're up to 3. Looks like they don't have the cash percentage on them, but I do think that was a decent move. So I think some money did come in on their side. And then BYU, obviously, same thing. I had 1.5 on them, which I should say I have. They're up to 3 with juice now, so some significant money coming in on BYU as well. 92% of the cash on them, so it looks like that money is definitely coming in on their side. So I don't mind this slate of plays here, really, as far as the market has moved. If you like these plays, I mean, you may have to pay a little bit of a worse price on some of these, which I don't know if I would totally want to do that, but it is basketball, so the numbers are a little bit less important than in football, but like you'd rather have 2 than 3, because that's one bucket, 2-point bucket rather than a 3-point bucket. But that's the college basketball slate. For the detailed analysis on why I'm playing those, you can go see what I talked about this morning. Let's get into NHL because I just skipped everything here as far as NHL is concerned. There's some big games here, man. So let's get into it. I have 2 plays here. My Boston Bruins are actually a home favorite against the Minnesota Wild. As I keep saying, Minnesota's not as good as their record looks. I'm not going to play this game, but I will just break it down quickly because I always talk about the Bruins. Minnesota's finishing a 5-game road trip, but they've had 2 days off, and the last time they played, they lost 6-0 at Ottawa. So I kind of think they are going to be in bounce-back mode after that. I don't know who they're going to have in net. Gustafsson played in their last game. He is their primary goalie. He'll probably be in net tonight because they've had 2 days off. So it will probably be him, but then they do have Carolina in 2 days, so that may be a little bit of a look ahead, but I still think they may be focused on Boston. As Boston, I mean, they're an original 6 team. They haven't been playing that badly, and when you lost 6-0 in your last game, you're probably going to show up focused. Boston, they beat the Rangers 6-3 in their last game, and they have the Rangers again next. But, I mean, Minnesota coming into your place, a team with a good record. I don't know that you're really going to overlook Minnesota, even if you are coming off a big win. So this is a tough game to read. Boston sitting at -130 with 68% of the cash on them, but 56% of the tickets on Minnesota. I think that's more the number than the situation. Again, I think it's like analytics guys coming in and just saying, well, Minnesota's not as good as they look. The odds makers are actually telling you Boston is a slightly better team as they're getting a little bit more than home ice. In a situation like this, I don't really see much of an edge. You know me and liking to find situations. So the game's going to be a pass, but the market read is at least on the Bruins, so hopefully they can get that done. But again, with Minnesota off an embarrassing loss and Boston off of a nice win, I don't know if I would trust the Bruins in that spot. Florida and Washington I'll talk about because it's a huge game. Florida has been rolling recently. I mean, of course, they're the defending champs, and they're still a very similar team. They had night play 2 nights ago, so they're probably going to have Bobrovsky back in net, so they will have their top goaltender back in net here, I assume, and they're starting a 2-game road trip against the team with still basically the best record in hockey, Washington, so very likely Florida's going to show up in this game. And meanwhile, Washington, they just lost a tough game to Winnipeg, 5-4, close game in overtime, and that was on a return home spot. So, and they've had 2 days off, so I could see this kind of going either way for Washington. I mean, that was a big game for Washington, but then again, it was a return home spot, which is not a great spot, even though they were facing an opponent they were going to get up for. I mentioned I did lean to Winnipeg in that game. Winnipeg did win because I just don't love teams that are returning home from road trips. Tends to be a distracted spot. But I don't think they were really distracted, though. I mean, they played a pretty close, good game against Winnipeg. So that's the one thing. If a team returns home from a road trip and they have a real stinker in that game, they tend to get refocused and do a lot better in the next game up. But they did not have a stinker. They played pretty well and took Winnipeg into overtime. So I don't know that they're really going to be in that, totally focused spot coming off of that. I mean, I think they're just playing 2 huge games in a row pretty much. So we'll see. I think Washington should be probably the bit more of the tired team out of the 2 here, even though they did have those 2 days off. So I would slightly lean to Florida in this one. They're up from -120 to -129. So that's another kind of indicator. The odds makers are telling you that even though Washington has the better record, Florida is actually enough of the better team that they're a favorite on the road. So the odds makers are telling you, even though Washington's good, they're not the best team in the NHL. But Florida does have 58% of tickets and only 53% of the cash. Kind of surprising to me that with a line like this that you wouldn't see some of the public take a shot on Washington and think, oh, I'm getting the team with a better record at home at an underdog price. That seems tempting, right? Although it is Florida. I mean, everybody knows how good they are. They're the returning champs, so probably carrying that name recognition as well. But I lean to the Florida side in that one. That one is not a play for me. What is a play is this next game up. I am on Vegas -145. Hopefully these lines have not moved much. Let me see. Vegas is up from -140 to -146, so it's about the same as it was this morning. They got 57% of tickets and 80% of the cash on them, so I think the money is coming in on the Vegas side. I agree with it. I'm playing Vegas. I've played them at least once in a road spot that was kind of like this, where they were a road favorite in a good spot, and they got the job done for me. That was in that St. Louis zigzag spot, so hopefully they're able to do that again here. I mean, Vegas is on a 3-game losing streak, man, and they just started this road trip and lost to the New York Rangers after losing 2 OT games to Dallas and Columbus, and now I think you're going to get a focused effort out of them here, man. They started the road trip, didn't do well. When you start the road trip, you usually have a focused spot, but they did not. But now they got that first road game out of the way, and they're staying in the New York City area for the next 3 games, basically. So, or for these 3 games, I should say. So they're not really traveling much. They're already out in New York. So I think this is a spot where now they have their bearings. I think they're going to show up focused here. And I think they're definitely going to be focused because the Islanders have actually been pretty hot. Islanders trying to put themselves in playoff position here, which sounds ridiculous. But the Islanders have won 8 straight games in a row. Excuse me, whatever this is. 7 games in a row. And then they finally took the loss at Florida with Sorokin not in net because it was a back-to-back. So finally, the Islanders had to go to their one of their backup goalies, Skarik, and he did not do well in that game. They got crushed by Florida, but that's the kind of loss that I think can linger, man. When you're on a big win streak like this, I think that having a loss like that, especially when it's in an emotional, get-up game like that against the returning champs, I think that can kind of linger into the next game. And look at the scheduling situation the Islanders are in. They're coming back from a road trip. I know it wasn't a long road trip, but it did take them down to Florida. They finally had their win streak ended on that trip, and now they're returning home from that trip. And I always say return home tends to be a little bit of a distraction. It shouldn't be a total distraction because Vegas is a good team. So you do still want to be focused on Vegas. But this is a spot where I've mentioned spots like this before. It's like a home sandwich spot where we have one home game sandwiched in between 2 road trips. It's kind of a ridiculous spot to be in where you only have that one home game. So like these guys are adults. They have to get stuff done at home, and they know they only have a couple of days to get whatever they have to get done at home while they have to focus on this game as well. And then they have to go back out on the road. And their road trip starts with a game against Winnipeg, who has a really good record. I know Vegas also has a really good record, but I just think that this is the type of spot that's kind of a hangover spot. It's a bad travel spot in the return home, and they have to look ahead to returning going back out on the road after this. So I really don't like the spot for the Islanders. Vegas is the better team, as the odds makers are telling you. The Islanders have been hot and maybe riding a little bit of recency bias here. Vegas has lost 3 games in a row, so I think you are going to see a focused Vegas team rather than the Islanders, who just lost their huge hot streak. So I will play Vegas in that game. You know, it's a little bit of a road price there, but I think it's justified in that spot. So give me Vegas. We got Carolina, Winnipeg. I almost wanted to play this game on Carolina. This is one of the biggest games of the day, of course, and the market looks like it is strongly indicating on Carolina. I'm kind of mad I didn't play this, because I could have played this at minus 120 this morning, and now Carolina's up to minus 153, which is just crazy. 88% of the cash on them and 57% of the tickets are on Winnipeg. So Winnipeg's getting the public action, which makes sense, even though everybody knows these are 2 good teams. People are kind of pumping up Carolina even further because they just made that trade. They got Rantanen, who's kind of a big name, like a big scorer, big offensive player. But in this case, the public, I think, is going to look at this and think, holy crap, I'm getting this huge underdog price on Winnipeg. It looks pretty nice to get a price like that on Winnipeg. I do think the price has gotten maybe a little too high on Carolina. Again, I'm mad I didn't play it this morning at minus 120 on them. But it was just like, I don't really know that I want to necessarily fade Winnipeg at home, and they're 25-3 at home. I mean, they've been really good at home. 20 wins, 5 losses, and 3 overtime losses at home. They've been very dominant at home. So it's just, I don't necessarily want to try to fade Winnipeg on their home ice, but it is a bad spot for Winnipeg. And they're returning home from a road trip. They went out to the East Coast, basically. Well, not basically, they did. And they swept their Eastern trip here. It wasn't that long of a trip, but they've been out for basically a week, even though they only played 3 games. So they had some rest in the middle of the road trip, but they swept the road trip, Montreal, Boston, and then it culminated in them getting their 6th win in a row, and it was a win in OT, as I just mentioned, against Washington, which was a huge win. Now they're returning home from that. But again, are they not going to be focused on Carolina when they know Carolina's a good team? I think they will probably still have some focus here, but it is also still a bad spot as they're coming off a big overtime game, a sweep on an East Coast road trip, and returning home from that road trip and having to get stuff done at home. Like I said, it can be a distraction. So it is certainly not a great spot for Winnipeg there. And I think Carolina is in the better spot as they're starting a road trip and coming off a loss to the LA Kings. I mean, the Kings are a little bit of a schizo team. I mean, sometimes they look like one of the best teams in the NHL, and sometimes they look pretty awful. They're a decent team, and Carolina lost to them to finish that 2-game homestand on a loss. They've had 2 days off, and now they're starting a road trip. And as I always say, when you start a road trip, you do go out on that road trip with focus, and you want to start off that road trip on the right foot. And they're starting it off against Winnipeg, who's one of the best teams in hockey. So you know you're going to get a focused effort out of Carolina here, whereas Winnipeg, in the spot that they're in, I think their focus is at least a little bit in question. So I do like Carolina there. The market looks like it's all over Carolina. Again, I'm mad I didn't play it and get the better price at least and crush the market early on. Charles, what's up, man? Yeah, this is the evening stream for me. It's like 6 p.m. my time. We got college basketball starting in 10 minutes, but I'm doing this because I have to get out and go to work in the morning, and I thought I was going to be able to get this done, but it's just such a huge Tuesday slate with a huge hockey slate, huge college basketball slate, and I talked about way too much college basketball this morning. So again, if you want the college basketball analysis, got to check out the morning stream from today, but I did not talk about NHL or NBA, so that's why I'm doing it now, because I have 2 plays in both. Charles, thanks for hanging out, man. Yeah, I don't know if I should start doing evening ones or not, because a lot of times I don't like to do it because I get home and then like a lot of times some of these, especially college basketball, a lot of times it's starting at 5, 6, and occasionally I will have plays in those games. And like today, I at least gave analysis on that Marquette St. John's game that's coming up. I like St. John's in that game, but yeah, I mean, So it's a little bit tough because a lot of times I want to talk about some of those games that are going to start at that time. Colorado, Vancouver is a big game. I'll talk about this, and then I'll talk about the other play that I have, which you might know what it is because there aren't that many games left on the slate there. Colorado, they were on the other side of that Rantanen trade where people think that they lost that trade, but I don't know. I mean, since that trade has happened, what are they 2-1, I guess, since that trade? I don't know. When did that trade happen? I don't even remember. They've won 2 games in a row, but I mean, at home against not very good teams, St. Louis and Philadelphia, but they did shut them out. And now they're taking that momentum out on the road with them. So I don't think it's a really bad spot for Colorado starting a road trip. As I just said for Carolina, when you start a road trip, you tend to be in a focused spot there because you want to get the road trip off on the right foot. Meanwhile, Vancouver, they actually are in a focused spot as well, in my opinion, because they returned home from a road trip and they kind of got caught in that return home from a road trip against Detroit. Although, are we going to call that an ugly loss? I don't know, because they lost a tough game against Dallas to finish the road trip. No shame in that, losing on the road to Dallas. They returned home. It was a bad spot. It's almost always a bad spot when you return home from a road trip, man, especially when you got a bigger game up next, and in this case, Colorado was looming next. That was a bad spot. Maybe I should have played Detroit, but I think Detroit was like in the middle of that road trip, and Detroit was coming off a pretty big game as well, so I didn't do it. But Vancouver lost in overtime. So you might say, well, that means that Vancouver played a big game there. So maybe with only 1 day of rest coming off a big game like that, maybe they won't be focused. I don't know. Or you could argue that was a bad performance out of them in the return home spot, and now they are going to be more focused. Yeah, I mean, I think they should be focused with Colorado coming into their place. Colorado's one of the better teams in hockey. We'll see who Vancouver has in net, as they've been kind of alternating between Lankinen and Demko. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know if it really matters, to be honest. So this is a tough read. I think both teams are arguably in good spots, but I think Colorado's probably in the slightly better spot. So that's the lean that I would have slightly. They're up from minus 135 to minus 152. They're public with 80% of the tickets, but 85% of the cash as well. And with NHL, there's a little bit of a caveat because especially with college basketball and NBA going on, the public doesn't come in that heavily on the hockey games. So the public percentage, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, and you kind of just still have to look at where is the higher percentage of cash rather than, oh, this team is like so public because they have 80% of the tickets. Well, maybe they do, but a lot of those tickets are professional tickets in this case because the public just doesn't come in that heavy on the NHL slate, if that makes sense. So that it also means that a lot of the line moves that you see are professional line moves in the NHL. The public definitely cannot move these lines. There's just not enough money coming in from the pros. And my other hockey play is I'm stepping right in front of this Detroit train, man. I got Seattle minus 118, which I did give out this morning, and has actually gone down a little bit from minus 110 to minus 107, so maybe we can get a better price on that. I don't know. 84% of tickets and 55% of the cash on Detroit, though. So Detroit is very public, it looks like, with less of the cash, so I don't know why the line has moved down a little bit on Seattle, because the percentages, I feel, are kind of a pretty strong indicator here, whereas this move on the money line isn't that big of a move. So I kind of feel like this is a bigger indicator with the percentages there. It's a big percentage discrepancy, and I'm stepping right in front of this Detroit train, man, as they've won 6 games in a row. But I think this is where it's going to end, as they're finishing up a road trip here. They're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, 4th game in 6 days, all in different cities. They just went up to Canada, beat Edmonton in a shootout, huge win. Got Calgary in what I thought was a sandwich spot for Detroit, and they still won. And then they beat Vancouver in overtime 2 days ago, and now they get Seattle, who not only isn't playing that well, but Detroit just beat Seattle 6-2 in Detroit on January 12th. So I really don't know that they're going to show up totally focused for this game against Seattle, man. They've already had a successful road trip. They might be getting a little bit tired at the end of the road trip, really not having many days off during the road trip, facing a team they just easily beat not that long ago. And when they return home, they got Tampa Bay and then Minnesota. So those might be considered to be bigger games, even though they did beat Tampa as well not that long ago. But and they're probably looking forward to getting some rest here as well when they return home. They will have 3 days off. So I think this might be a spot where they just might get caught and might overlook Seattle. Seattle has not been playing well. They're well below 500 right now. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games, 4 of their last 6. But I think this is a bounce back spot for them, man. I mean, they have more rest right now, as they had multiple days off prior to their previous game against Calgary. So they've only played one game in the last 4 days. So that's not that bad, in my opinion. And they lost that game to Calgary. Not a great loss. Now they get Detroit, who they just lost to. Like I said, pretty ugly, 6-2. And that was with Grubauer in net, by the way, for Seattle, who's their lesser goalie. So they may have Decord in net tonight. We'll have to see, because he's only played the last 2 games. And with that much rest in between them, you may see him going. So you may get Seattle's better goalie here as well. And they're in a little bit of a quick revenge spot here. Detroit, I think, is kind of in an overlook spot here. And they're traveling and playing more games. So Seattle's got the better rest advantage here. They got the travel advantage here, not going anywhere. Trying to get a win here as they're only 1-2 on the homestand here. Want to even up that homestand? I'll take Seattle. It almost looks too easy to take Detroit. Getting them at an underdog price as they've won so many games in a row now. And they got the better record. They're the hot team. It looks way too easy to take Detroit here, getting a little bit of an underdog price. Give me Seattle at whatever the best price is that you can get there. Rantanen and Juntorp trade. That was in January. All right, yeah, so it's been longer than I thought. Yeah, somebody brought it up in the it was mostly Rantanen and Ncaab. How do you pronounce his name? Natchez, I think is actually how I pronounce it. I think there's there's an accent on the C there. I think he's Eastern European. Natchez. So those were the 2 biggest components of the trade. Natchez went to Colorado and Rantanen went to Carolina. So I don't know. But yeah, I tried to talk about it when somebody brought it up, but I don't know much about this personnel. So I don't know if it's Swedish. It seems more like Czech or Polish to me or something. Do you want me to look it up right now? I can. Let me see. Martin Nečas. He's Czech. That's what I said, man. I called it Czech. Check. All right. Let's go over to NBA here before I get out of here. The NBA slate is at least a little bit less. There's less going on with the NBA. Let me see here. NBA starts at 7:30. I'm going to start by talking about a play, and I gave out these plays this morning, but remember, I said you got to wait on Dallas. Yeah, that's right, man. 156 IQ. People think I'm retarded, but I do have a high IQ. I have good pattern recognition, good memory at least, or at least it used to be prior to the stroke. Dallas, Philadelphia. This is the first game up at 7 p.m. It's in a half an hour. I mentioned it this morning. I mentioned I liked Dallas, but it was at Philadelphia minus 1.5 this morning, and I said wait on this game. I gave it out just as a tentative play. I said I was going to play Dallas, and I gave it out, it's 1.5 right now, but I didn't play it this morning. I said wait on this game because really I thought this line could only go up because Dallas, they're really playing with a shell of a team right now, man. Dallas is without Lively, but they already were. He's been out for a while. But they are going to be without Powell in this game. We already know they're without Anthony Davis. He hasn't started playing yet for Dallas. So that's no change. And they're without P.J. Washington and Caleb Martin as well. So Dallas really, really playing with a thin roster here, man. But I think you're actually getting some value on Dallas here. And the line has moved on the 76ers up to 4.5 now because Joel Embiid is coming back in this game. Drummond is not back yet. I believe Paul George is out for a longer period of time. They're not getting Gordon or Lowry back yet. These guys look like they're all coming back pretty soon. But Embiid is coming back. And Embiid, the thing about him, man, is, obviously having him on the floor is going to improve Philadelphia, their talent level. But he's been out for 15 games, as you can see here. And when you get a star player like that and you have to thrust him back into the lineup, it can be a jarring change, man, because the Sixers are used to playing without him. You got to redevelop that chemistry, and he is really kind of a head case. And the other thing is it's going to move the line, in my opinion, I think, too much. So you're getting Dallas now. I got to update this. You can get Dallas at plus 4.5 right now out there, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab Dallas plus 4.5. I think this is a bad spot for the Sixers. They're up from 1.5 to 4.5. Now 81% of the tickets are on the Sixers, but 70% of the cash on the Mavs. And the line has moved, like I said, because the Mavs have this really thin roster right now. Embiid is coming back for the Sixers, but I think that makes it like a super injured player theory spot where you have an injured player spot basically for the Mavs. So the guys that they do have playing are going to step it up for this one game because that they know they have to compensate for all those guys being out, whereas the Sixers, they might be able to even take a little bit of a step back because Embiid is coming back. Oh, well, we were doing all right without Embiid, at least recently. In that last game, I think they did. So, like, we could take a little bit of a step back here with Embiid coming back, and it can be a chemistry issue. Like I said, it moves the line, in my opinion, too much. So I think the value is on Dallas here. And the other thing I like about Dallas has just been getting totally made fun of since this trade, man. They've been the butt of every joke. And the day of the trade where they traded Luka, but remember, Luka wasn't even playing. So really their lineup is only changing that much because they have some guys out in this game. They're missing some of those other components like Washington. I mean, they are pretty big components, but they've been playing without some of these other guys for a while now. I believe they will still have, Gafford, I think, is playing, and Kyrie Irving will still play in this game. So they at least have those guys. So they do have a couple of their major pieces still playing here. So I don't think it's that bad. But what happened with Dallas? They played 2 days ago. They've lost 2 games in a row on the road trip here, and they lost 144 to 101 the day of the trade, man. I don't care who you are. If you lose by 43 points, that is unbelievably embarrassing, even though it was to Cleveland. That was the day of the trade where everybody was making fun of it. Oh, Dallas, they're so stupid for trading Luka, whatever. And I think their mindset was just awful in that game. But now you lose a game like that, I think it's going to be a rallying cry. I think you're going to rally off of that loss. That is way too embarrassing a loss. I expect a way better effort from Dallas coming into this game against Philly, even though, yes, they do have Boston next, and it is going to be their second attempt at the finals rematch here as they lost the first game against Boston not that long ago. But seriously, I don't think that you overlook a game where you lose by 40-something points. I think you show up and play in the next game, and I think they're going to try to win one, with all these players injured here. I think the guys that are playing are going to show up with effort here. And meanwhile, Philadelphia, in their last game, they had a complete implosion in this game, man. They almost beat the Celtics. Not only did they almost beat the Celtics, look at this game. Philadelphia was winning this game by more than 20 points going into the fourth quarter. No, it was 14 going into the fourth quarter, but they were winning by more than 20 points late in the third quarter, and they lost the game. It was, I think, the biggest comeback in the NBA this season, or maybe in the last few seasons. The Celtics erased a 20-something point deficit that late in the game and wound up winning the game. And they came close to actually covering as a double-digit favorite, too. If you're the Sixers, I don't know how you bounce back from that, man, even though I know Embiid is coming back. But you're coming off this massive, massive effort against the Celtics where you had the Celtics dead. You were killing the Celtics, and you had them dead. You were probably celebrating. You were going to win on your own floor against the returning champs. And what happened? You lost the game right at the end. How do you turn around from that and play again? And now Embiid is coming back, which again I think is actually kind of a negative in a way because it's going to be a bit of a chemistry issue. I don't like how the spot sets up at all. I think you're getting value on Dallas, even though it looks hideously ugly with Dallas having basically nobody right now. But Dallas has been being made fun of so much by everybody for that trade. They're coming off one of their worst performances in recent years. 76ers, again, I think they're in a spot where it's going to be real tough for them to get back up off the mat. I like Dallas. Give me Dallas plus the generous helping of points, I think, in this one. You hate them just because of Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is an idiot, yeah, but I will like them. I'll like them if I have money on them. That's about it, though. They're not used to playing with them yet. And remember, I did have Dallas when they pulled that first upset that they had against OKC. I played the spot play there, and I got that one. I nailed it. Dallas with the outright win there. Yeah, I mean, it is an embarrassing loss for the Sixers, but again, it's not a game where you just get annihilated the whole game, which is what happened to Dallas. They just got completely, run out of the building in a totally embarrassing fashion. For the Sixers, yeah, it's embarrassing to blow a lead like that, but it's like this emotional thing where you think you're going to win that game, and then you have your heart ripped out, and it's against one of the best teams in basketball. So I don't know how you bounce back from a game like that. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, man, and these are the types of spots that I look for. We got a game between Boston and Cleveland. My Boston Celtics, the rubber match, basically. Or they might play one more time this year, but Boston won the first game at home. Cleveland won the second game at home. This is going to be an interesting one. Cleveland has flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite with juice. 54% of tickets, 62% of the cash coming in on Cleveland. So the odds makers are telling you the Celtics are the better team, as Cleveland is not getting a full home court advantage here, which has been the case. This is a very similar line to what we saw in the other games. I think the Celtics were like 4.5 or so at home, and I think the line was around this same line when they played at Cleveland. Of course, Cleveland did win that home game, which was the most recent game between the two. But in this spot, I don't know how it's going to play out, man. I mean, Boston, I think they were overlooking Philadelphia in that game because they had this game against Cleveland up next, and Philadelphia was a shell of a team, without Embiid, without George, whatever. I think the Celtics took them too lightly in that game, but the Celtics did have to put in a huge effort to come back in that game. So I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out. You could argue that the Celtics didn't focus in that game and that's going to scare them into focus and they're going to show up with a really focused effort here, which, I mean, yeah, it's Cleveland. Yeah, the Celtics are going to be focused here, especially when Cleveland has like a 4 or 5 game lead on them in the standings right now. The Celtics do want to try to close that gap to try to get the 1 seed somehow here. So it is a big game, maybe a bigger game for the Celtics, and maybe they'll be in a refocus spot, but they did have to put in a big effort late in that game, and Cleveland did not have to put in a big effort when they crushed Dallas. I mean, that was an easy game where they probably had backups in the game at the end of it. As you can see, it looks like they did because Donovan Mitchell's not even one of the top performers here in the game. So there is that. So, and Cleveland is not traveling, and Boston is. So rest-wise, travel-wise, yeah, it looks a little bit better for Cleveland. But is Cleveland going to be feeling a little bit too high on themselves, plump and gay off of winning by 40-something points? I don't know. I mean, it is Boston. You are going to be focused against Boston. I mean, they're the returning champs. They're still probably the best team in the NBA, even though it is close between a few of the top teams. So both teams are going to be focused here. This is a huge game for both teams. I do think Cleveland has the rest edge and the travel edge, but psychologically, maybe the Celtics have a little bit of the edge because Cleveland is coming off such an easy win. Like I said, they might just be feeling maybe a bit too cocky, and the Celtics are coming off almost losing to an inferior team who's missing basically all their best players. So I don't know what I want to do with the game. The market read is slightly on the Cavs, as you can see, with the money coming in on their side a little bit. Yeah, psychology play. I'm not going to be playing the game, but yeah, plump and gay, yeah. So we'll see what happens in that game, man. Then we got, what else we got? Oh, did I close? I closed the NBA schedule tab here, man. Houston at Brooklyn, I'll just mention real quick because Houston did just lose horribly to Brooklyn at home. The last time they played them, which that was a bad spot for Houston. They were returning home from a nice road trip where they almost swept the road trip, played some good teams on that road trip. It was a bad spot, but man, they were a 14-point favorite in this game, and they lost to Brooklyn. Real ugly loss, and I think they were probably looking ahead to the Knicks, and then they still went and they lost to the Knicks, but that was yesterday. So even though Houston isn't a little bit of a quick revenge spot here against Brooklyn, they're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, and actually, I guess a 4th game in 6 days, and actually a 5th in 8 days, and a 6th in 9. That is crazy. And a 7th in 11 days, all in different cities. So they've had a really packed schedule here. 7 games in 11 days and a back-to-back. So I just can't do it. Even though it is a revenge spot for the Rockets, I can't come in and play the Rockets here with this lack of rest that they have here. I just can't do it, man. Brooklyn, they're coming off those 2 wins. Brooklyn hasn't played since that game against Houston, so they've actually had 2 days off. Yeah, they're returning home, and yeah, they might be feeling high on themselves after beating this Houston team, and now they get to play them again, but Houston definitely is at the rest and travel disadvantage here at the very least. Houston's up from 9 to 9.5 on the road, which is about where it should be if they were at 14 at home. That's about right. 82% of the tickets and only 55% of the cash. So even though the lines moved up a little bit on Houston, they are a public favorite, it looks like, on the road. So yeah, I would not touch Houston, even though it is the quick revenge spot. That's really the only positive there. Plump and gay, yeah, skip it. Yeah, skip the pussy. All right, and then we got, yeah, my one other play here, and maybe I'll talk about the LA game as well. I don't know, but my one other play here is going to be It's ugly, man. You know I play these ugly dogs here in some of these, even though I have all college basketball favorites. I'm going to play the Toronto Raptors plus 5.5. I gave these out this morning as well, remember? So this line may have moved a little bit. Where's it at now? Actually, it's around the same. It looks like it's 6 with reduced juice, 5.5, whatever. The Knicks got 51% of the tickets on them, but 62% of the cash on the Toronto Raptors. I like how this sets up for the Raptors here, man. And the Knicks, they are more of a defensive team, so the style that they play isn't that great for covering as a road favorite. But look at the Knicks' schedule right here, man. They're playing a third game in 4 days, not all in different cities, but they just lost to the Lakers. They'd beaten Memphis, Denver, a couple of big wins there, lost to the Lakers, and they turn around and beat Houston. That's a big game, and that was yesterday. And now they have to travel up to Toronto, go through customs to play one game against the Toronto Raptors after beating Houston, and then they get some rest, and then they got Boston up next. So do you really think the Knicks are going to be totally focused here, having to go up to Toronto for one game with no time off, having to travel up there? I don't think so. I don't like it. And laying points on the road in a spot like this, I think it's pretty dangerous. I don't like it at all, man. They could be looking ahead to Boston. I think it pretty much qualifies as a sandwich spot here. Toronto, certainly not one of the better teams in basketball, even though they have been playing better recently, which I actually like. Toronto, shockingly, has won a bunch of games recently. They've won, 8 of their last 10 games or something, including against Boston, Golden State, Orlando, 2 against Atlanta, 1 against the Clippers. They've been playing pretty well, but they're in a better spot because they're just staying at home, and I don't really think they're going to be in a letdown spot off of beating the Clippers because the Knicks, I mean, that's a big opponent coming into your house. So I don't know. I just think Toronto's in the much better spot here. They're just kind of sitting in wait. I do think they're going to be focused on an Eastern Conference foe that's one of the better teams there. They're getting points at home. The Knicks are in a worse spot. Toronto at least had yesterday off. They haven't traveled for a while. They haven't been on the road since January 29th. Yeah, I'll take the points with Toronto. The market seems to agree with it, so give me that one. And then I will talk about LA before I get out of here. The Battle of LA, which these two teams actually just played not that long ago at the Clippers, and the Clippers won, which was, when was that game? That wasn't that long ago, right? Where is it? There it is. On January 19th, it was at the Clippers. Clippers won by 14. So it's a little bit of quick revenge for the Knicks, but for the Lakers, but I don't really like the spot for the Lakers here because they just went on a really successful road trip where they went out on the road after beating Boston. They started the road trip, carried the momentum out there, started on the West Coast, beat Golden State, then they went east, beat Charlotte. They lost to Philadelphia, which kind of inexplicable there, but whatever, what can you do? I mean, the Lakers do have some old guys that get tired. Of course, AD was still playing for them up until one of these most recent games as well. Then they had that trade where, of course, Luka's not going to be playing for them yet, but it looks like he is coming back maybe in a few days. I don't know. But, of course, LA, they're going to be without AD and Luka coming into the game tonight. But they beat Washington, but they absolutely crushed Washington, who's the worst team in the NBA, but still totally embarrassed them. And then they beat the Knicks, which is a nice win against a pretty good Knicks team. Even though the Knicks have had some injuries. I think the Knicks might have been without Josh Hart and I forget. They had one other injury in there. The Knicks have had a couple of key injuries there. So I don't know. I think that was in that game. Maybe it was actually in the next Knicks game where those guys didn't play. I don't remember. But the Lakers, they're kind of in a return home spot now, man. So that's why I don't really like this. They were on the East Coast, and now even though this is a road game technically, I mean, they're back in LA, man. So I think they return home, and I think they started getting settled back at home, man, because they're in LA now. So why wouldn't they start getting stuff done at home here when they can with 2 days off? So I think that's a little bit of a distraction, even though, yeah, I know they just lost to the Clippers. It's a big LA rivalry, but I don't love the spot the Lakers are in, having that time off there to get stuff done at home in the return home spot from the East, because it is still a return home spot, even though it is technically a road game. The LA Clippers, they're also returning home from a road trip, So both teams are actually returning home from road trips. So I can't get involved in this game. I mean, LA's had Clippers have had less time off as well. They just had a 2-2 road trip that took them to Phoenix, San Antonio in the Southwest. Then they actually went to Charlotte and then up to Toronto, and they actually lost to Toronto, as I mentioned. So they are coming off an ugly loss, and they are facing their LA rival, so they may still be focused here. So both teams are in return home spots. Both teams still might be focused here, and the Clippers are actually up from an 8-point favorite to an 8.5-point favorite, and they only have 51% of the tickets, 65% of the cash, though. So the money looks like it is coming in a little bit on the side of the Clippers. I probably wouldn't disagree with it, but the line is definitely a little bit high because, of course, the Lakers are now without AD, and Luka's not there yet. So that is obviously affecting the line. You have to account for that in the line. So that is why the Clippers are that big a favorite. But it looks like the public is looking at this and thinking there's some value with grabbing the Lakers here. I mean, I don't think they're so stupid that they think Luka's playing in this game. But they're probably thinking, oh, the Lakers won that trade and they're getting what looks like a lot of points from the Clippers here. So I don't know. We will see. But that's about it. And then the Pacers are in a back-to-back coming out of elevation, had played in Utah last night, and they didn't win for me last night. So I don't think they're in a very good spot. Down from 5 to 4.5 with juice. 73% of tickets, only 71% of the cash. So I don't like the Pacers in that spot either. And I think Portland probably has rest. Oh, let me see here. Did they play yesterday? Portland beat Phoenix again. Let me see. They beat Phoenix twice. Yeah, they played yesterday, actually, and they beat Phoenix in overtime. So both of those teams have no rest. Both Indiana and Portland played yesterday, but at least for Portland, they're not traveling. And Portland has been shockingly hot, winning 8 of their last 9 games, with their only loss being to Oklahoma City. But they're coming off that huge win against Phoenix, 2 wins against Phoenix, sweeping the back-to-back. So I don't know that they're really going to be in that great a spot. But Indiana's certainly not in a good spot either after having to come back and win in elevation in Utah last night and go down to the Pacific Coast. So I won't touch that game. So one more time. All these games are still ready. They're still live. We got Central Michigan -1. This is all college basketball. Northwestern -2. I think those lines are mostly still out there. Wisconsin, I actually think I got it -9, but 9.5, whatever. I think you might be able to get 8.5 now if you want that one. Arizona State, I took it -1.5. They're up to 2.5, maybe 3. So I don't know. Tread with caution at least on these, but because you're getting a little bit of the worst number, but I do like the side. Arizona State, and same with BYU. I'm on BYU -1.5. Go watch my morning video for the analysis on the college basketball. Those lines have both moved up. And then we got NBA, Dallas +4.5, Toronto +5.5, hockey, Vegas -145, Seattle minus, I think you can get better than -118 right now, maybe -110 or something. That's going to do it for me. Thanks for hanging out, Mr. Charles. LA has way too many teams. Yeah, they have 2 football teams. They got 2 NBA teams. They got how many baseball teams do they have? They just have the Dodgers, right? No, they have Anaheim. Does that count? Anaheim's like 30 minutes down the road, so I don't know if that counts. And if that counts, then you got Anaheim in hockey as well, with the LA also having a hockey team. Yeah, fuck LA. I hate LA. LA is a bunch of Hollywood homos, and I am watching the ESPN 30 for 30. They'll start Bronny James. I don't know. He's been coming off the bench, I think, right? But they have been playing him a little bit more. But ESPN 30 for 30, the Celtics-Lakers rivalry series, best of enemies or whatever. I've been watching that. It's pretty entertaining. I mean, it does show you how like lame and gay the Hollywood Lakers really are, especially during the 80s period where it's like Magic Johnson, just kind of a phony dude, man, to be honest. I mean, he was definitely not a hood type of guy. Let's just put it that way. More of an O.J. Simpson type of character, although he's not a murderer. But we don't think, at least. But I just think he's phony. He's just full of himself. And then meanwhile, you had the Celtics, who were kind of more the blue collar, like physical, like classic team versus the stupid, flashy Showtime, like Harlem Globetrotter style Lakers. So pretty lame. Magic Johnson's son is trans. I'm not shocked by that, since Magic Johnson also has AIDS. So I don't know. It's all pretty gay. And then the Celtics, I still side with the 80s Celtics, and I still like what Larry Bird did for them, even though I don't like what he did to me, telling me to fuck off when I was 11. And I tried to get his autograph at a Celtics Summer League game when he was coaching the Indiana Pacers at the time. I did kind of chase him down a hallway a little bit, but I just wanted to get his autograph. I have the Celtics hat. I have all of his other contemporaries on that hat. I've got Kevin McHale signed it, Robert Parrish signed it, ML Carr signed it, DJ Dennis Johnson's signatures on it, and he is not alive anymore. I got Reggie Lewis on that thing, even though he played a little bit after that era, and he, of course, died, collapsed on the court because he was a cocaine user. That whole thing sucked. Celtics with their cocaine guys, man, with Len Bias, who never even got to play. Crazy, man. Larry, I don't know what the deal was with him that day, man, but I think he is kind of a dick. I think it's kind of like a known thing. I mean, he was a dick on the court, but I think he kind of is off the court too. But at least on the court, he's trash talking the hated opponents, and he's probably the best white player in NBA history. So there is that. Excellent shooter and ridiculous passer too, and he would just somehow just know like where the ball was going to go, whether he was shooting it or passing. It didn't even matter. Just that instinct was crazy. So all of that. And I think I have Chris Ford's signature on that hat too. I think he might have been a bench player during that era. Maybe it was a little bit of an earlier era for the Celtics, or he was on the Celtics bench, but he was their coach for a little while, and things did not go well with him as coach. So the best white player, the hick from French Lick, Indiana, man. And I still did not get him to sign that hat, or that hat would be complete, basically, if I had him on that with DJ McHale and Parrish and ML Carr. Man, it's brutal. No Cedric Maxwell on that thing, no, I don't think. Wait, did I get his? I don't think I did. But all right. That's going to do it, Charles. Thanks for hanging out. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter, patreon.com/Tower Gang. Subscribe to the Patreon. We'll be live tomorrow, 9:11 p.m. Eastern, with another episode of the most hilarious podcast ever. And if you subscribe to the Patreon, you get live pre-show, post-show, and hang out in a Telegram with us. It is, it's a lot of fun. It's the most hilarious, offensive podcast ever. Thanks, Charles. Thanks the rest of the viewers. That's going to do it for me. Let's get some wins tonight. Things are starting. Oh, man, I have the wrong channel on. I should have Fox Sports on or whatever to watch this Big Ten game that already started. But hopefully we get some wins here, man. Let's have a good Tuesday. Let's hope it's not a Tuesday booze day. And I mean booing rather than boozing, because I am sober now. Tower Gang Wednesday, baby. Tomorrow night, let's have it. Let's get it all. Let's have a good week. Peace out, man. Thanks.